Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving into something today that I know a lot of you are familiar with, sadly, migraines. Ugh, the worst, right?
The absolute worst.
That feeling when it's like a jackhammer in your head, you can't even handle a tiny bit of light or sound, and it's not just a headache, is it?
No, not at all.
Today, we're digging into a surprisingly simple solution that you might not expect. Head wraps. We actually got some really interesting info from the CareClinic team on this one. They seem pretty passionate about head wraps for migraines.
Oh, yeah, they had a lot to say.
So get ready, because this is going to be good.
I'm ready.
Okay, so first things first. Expert, can you break this down for me and for our listeners? Why are migraines such a big deal? Like, we all know they're awful, but what is it about them that makes them more than just a bad headache?
Right, because people will say, oh, it's just a headache. But with migraines, you're talking about a whole neurological situation happening.
Exactly. It's not just in your head. Well, it is in your head, but...
Yeah, it's in your head, but not in the way that people mean it, right?
Exactly. And the research actually talks about blood vessels, inflammation, even things like serotonin, CGRP. It's way more complicated than it seems.
It really is. And I think sometimes that's why it's so hard to figure out how to treat them. Because everyone's got their own thing going on, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, some people get those visual things, right? Like the auras, I think they're called.
Yeah, auras.
Flashing lights, blind spots, that kind of thing.
It's like your brain is throwing a little pre-party before the main migraine event.
Okay, that's both amazing and terrifying at the same time.
Right.
And so that brings us to the big question, I think. Head wraps. I'll be honest, when I first heard about this as a possible solution for migraines, I was like, how? How is a wrap supposed to help with all that neurological stuff we were just talking about?
I think a lot of people probably feel that way at first. But the key here is that there are different types of head wraps, and they work in different ways. So some of them, they're focused on using cold. Like they'll have these gel packs you can freeze. And the idea is that the cold constricts the blood vessels. Remember we were talking about blood vessels before?
Yeah.
So it can help with that throbbing, pounding sensation that a lot of people experience.
Makes sense. It's like applying an ice pack, but specifically designed for your head.
Exactly. And then you've got other head wraps. They incorporate things like aromatherapy.
Ooh, aromatherapy. Now you're speaking my language. I love a good lavender scent to unwind.
Right. And there's something to be said for the power of relaxation and stress reduction. Right.
Okay, but is the aromatherapy thing legit, or is it just a nice bonus? Like, does it actually do anything for the migraine itself, or is it more about creating a calming vibe?
You know, that's a great question. And I think the research is still a bit up in the air on exactly how much of an impact aromatherapy has, specifically on migraine pain. But there's definitely evidence that certain scents can have an effect on our nervous system. They can help with tension, maybe even change how we perceive pain. So I think it's definitely worth exploring.
Okay, so it's not just about smelling nice. There might be some real science behind it. I like it.
Yeah. And that's what's so cool about all this, I think. It's like this simple thing, a head wrap, but it can actually tap into some pretty complex stuff happening in our brains.
I'm so intrigued.
Me too.
And speaking of intrigued, CareClinic actually gave us some specific head wraps to talk about today. They even recommend a few. Ready to dive into those?
Let's do it. I'm really curious to hear what they picked.
Okay, so CareClinic is like obsessed with this first one. The iThrow Migraine Ice Head Wrap. And what caught my eye right away, this thing does both hot and cold.
Oh, yeah. The best of both worlds.
Seriously, like sometimes I want ice, sometimes I want heat. It's nice to have options, you know?
Totally. Because migraines are so different for everyone, right?
Right.
What works for one person or even one migraine might not work for the next. So having that flexibility is key.
Absolutely. And speaking of flexibility, this wrap, it's made with bamboo fabric, which we've talked about before on the show, but I always forget. What's so great about bamboo again?
Okay, imagine this. You've got this pounding migraine. You're sensitive to everything, light, sound.
Ugh, tell me about it.
Right. And then you put on this head wrap that's scratchy or hot or just, ooh, you don't need that in your life.
No, thank you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So bamboo fabric, it's super soft, it's breathable, it wicks away moisture. It's all about making you as comfortable as possible, which is super important when you're trying to deal with a migraine.
Comfort is key. I'm all about that. Okay, but let's get back to the hot and cold thing for a sec. What is it about those temperatures that can help with a migraine? Is it like a blood flow thing?
It can be, yeah. So remember we were talking about how migraines can involve your blood vessels going kind of crazy?
Yeah, the blood vessel rave.
Exactly. So cold can actually help to constrict those blood vessels, like tell them to calm down a little bit. And that can really help with the throbbing pain. Heat, on the other hand, it's more about relaxing the muscles.
Oh, right, because migraines can cause a lot of tension, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially in your neck, your shoulders, your jaw. So heat can help to loosen all of that up, which can make a big difference.
I hold all my stress in my shoulders, so that makes total sense. But with this iThrow wrap, you don't even have to choose. You can do hot or cold, whatever feels best in the moment.
Exactly. It's like having your own personal heating pad and ice pack all in one.
Right. So convenient. And it's actually kind of stylish, too, which I appreciate. Because who wants to look like a mess when they're already feeling awful?
Right. Might as well feel cute while you're conquering your migraine.
Exactly. Speaking of conquering, I noticed that this wrap, it has adjustable straps. Is that just a comfort thing or?
It's definitely about comfort.
Mhm.
You want it to fit snugly but not be too tight. But
It's all about finding that sweet spot, not too loose, not too tight. But it sounds like that adjustability is about more than just comfort.
right. It also helps make sure the hot or cold therapy is actually, doing its job.
Yeah.
If it's too loose, it's not going to be as effective.
Makes sense. So it's like targeted relief. I like it. Okay, so say someone is listening to this and they're like, all right, I'm convinced, head wraps for the win, but where do I even start? What advice would you give them?
Well, first of all, welcome to the club. We're happy to have you. But seriously, there are a lot of options out there, so it can definitely feel overwhelming. I always say, think about your own migraines, like what usually helps you feel better.
Right, everyone's different.
Exactly. So, do you usually prefer cold, heat, or do you go back and forth? Are there certain materials that bother you? Once you kind of have a sense of your own preferences, it's easier to narrow down the choices.
Totally. It's like finding the right migraine fighting tool for your brain.
Exactly. And this is something CareClinic talks about a lot too. They're big on tracking your migraines.
Oh yeah, they love their app.
They do. But app aside, the idea of tracking is really important, I think, whether you use an app, a notebook, whatever works for you. But paying attention to your triggers, noticing what helps, that's huge.
Yeah, it's like becoming a migraine detective. You're gathering clues to solve the mystery of your own brain.
Love that.
Yeah.
And the more you know, the more power you have, right?
Yeah. Right. Knowledge is power. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. The science of migraines, those blood vessel parties, different types of head wraps, the importance of comfort and fit, even a little bit of migraine detective work.
It's a lot. But hopefully it's helpful for people who are, dealing with this.
Absolutely. And if anything, I hope it at least sparks some curiosity, because if head wraps can be a thing, who knows what other surprising solutions are out there.
Right. There's always more to learn.
Always. So on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive into the world of head wraps for migraines. But keep exploring, keep asking questions, and most importantly, keep those migraine gremlins at bay.
Like here.
Until next time.